diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
Hello and welcome. Happy Monday. Welcome to Patriots Across the Pond with Sue and Elisa. Today is Respect Monday, episode 11, and we're so honored to have as our guest today, LYNNE Scott HAGGERMAN. Hello, guys. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Good morning. It's nice to be here. I'm so excited about your show. I'm so honored and blessed.
Yeah, it's great. We've had about a 10-minute chat behind the scenes afterwards, but I just sat here like this really because the two beautiful ladies were talking about cats and things.
Exactly. So let me, for the benefit of our viewers who may not know you, be familiar with what you do, let me just read a little brief background about you, LYNNE. So LYNNE is a survivor, whistleblower, and eyewitness to crimes against children. Today, she is an international broadcaster, author, and advocate, speaking for the children who were trafficked, exploited, experimented on, and never given a voice, including the little girl she once was. As a young child, she was trapped in a trafficking house and funneled into institutionalized crimes against children, including experimental procedures carried out through a U.S. university medical system. These procedures didn't just affect her, they involved many other children whose lives and stories were often erased. The methods she experienced mirrored the psychological and medical brutality historically associated with government-linked human experimentation programs. It was a world of secrecy, deception, and calculated harm. In that darkness, God intervened. And that's where we would love to hear your story from you, LYNNE.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, God did intervene in that and helped me to survive for such a time as this. I'm here to be a voice for the voiceless. As you mentioned, the little girl in me that survived, helped other children survive, and even more so for the many, many, many little ones that didn't make it. I'm their voice so that people understand what it's like for the little ones when they're being harmed at this level, and also to give people hope. Because I also have a ministry, qgrit.org, and it's God's plan for the aftercare of the little ones once they're rescued from above ground and below ground trafficking, as well as to help adults with any type of trauma. So I encourage people to go there. Before the Lord activated me to start speaking in January of 2024, I spent years in deep healing. And during that time, he just started giving me his plan. And I would sit there during my daily Bible study and prayer time. And he would just say, this is, when you start speaking, this is what you're going to do, and this is your ministry, and this is how you're going to help the children. And I just wrote, and everything he told me is on that website. So I encourage people to go there. And what's even more amazing is during those years, he said I'd be speaking. I had no idea how that was going to happen. Because if you knew me before, I mean, I had it tortured out of me. The ability to speak was completely tortured out of me by the time before I even could speak. And so the fact that I'm sitting here as the sane, rational woman you see before you today is the grace of God and a lot of hard work. I have to say, still a lot of hard work. But we're here for such a time as this to help the little ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what our Monday show is all about and focused on. So we would love to know a little bit about your background and, what you went through and how that started. And then, of course, just how you started to, get like where you are today in the healing journey that you were on.
Yeah.
Yes.
This started very, very early for you from birth, didn't it, really? Up until sort of 5 years old, I've heard you say.
Yes, that's exactly right. So let me, start at the beginning. Thank you. My mother was born into generational pedophilia, and it goes back a long way. My dad was an alcoholic and a workaholic. He was never home. He had no idea what was going on. And my mom hated me from the time I was born until the day she died. And the main reason why was she was jealous of me because my dad loved me and he didn't love her, which I know sounds astounding to people. But when you're harmed this severely as a little one, it messes you up, for lack of a professional word, moment. And why some people come out of that harming others and why others don't, I really don't know. But she came out of her nightmare by hating me. And she intentionally sent me to the regional trafficking house, a child trafficking house, knowing what was happening. And she intentionally sent me to the U.S. University where they experiment on the children underground, which I'll get to in a bit. So I always like to start with the trafficking house because the trafficking houses worldwide are feeder systems into our university medical center experimentation programs. And this is worldwide. I focus on primarily the United States since that's where I am, but it's all over. And I have people who've reached out to me around the world, have a lot of customers worldwide, and this is an epidemic of worldwide proportions. But that was how I got my start. And from the time I was born until I was 5 years old, she required me, forced me, took me to the regional trafficking house. And I will have people ask me, where, and how the Lord's instructed me to address that is to say, any town USA, any town world, because it's everywhere. And I don't care the size of the town. If the population is 2,000, there's at least one child trafficking house in that area, because these are horrific, heinous crimes against the children. And they, for such a time as this, we need to be aware and know the action that people can take to help. So whenever she would send me there, I was sent there from the time I was born, and it was ran by an ex-military man who was completely insane. His whole family lived there, and there were children everywhere. Some were permanent, like myself. The vast majority moved through. And whenever the customers, they would be from all walks of life. I would see law enforcement there as customers. I would see people in religious garb. I would see doctors, medical people, businessmen, businesswomen, people from all walks of life. And we were harmed 24/7. And I usually don't get into many of the details of that because I don't think that it's necessary. I describe it. I like people, and the Lord wants people to understand what it's like from the little one's standpoint. So I'll describe it as a POW camp. I completely relate to veterans. As a matter of fact, if you compare the brain scan of a child who's been harmed to a vet who's just come back from combat, they're identical. The children are in combat zones and no one understands or recognizes the war because the brain scans are identical. And I've always related to them. Matter of fact, I help a lot of vets now too, with the different healing modalities that I offer. But it's a POW camp. And if people can think about that, I was held against my will. All the children are, none of us want to be there, held against our will. We're told when we can sleep and when we can't. If we're fed, I wasn't fed as a child. Matter of fact, for the most part, if I was fed, I had milk until I was about 4 years old, which of course has impacted my digestive system today. But we're fed when we're fed and we're given what we're given, and we have no control or say over any of that. Same with water, and same with the physical and mental torture that they can do at any time in any way they please. These people, they're not like us and they don't like us. They are evil. They have no conscience at all, and they love to harm children and make money from that. With the so that was what it was like day in and day out. You'll never hear me say child sex trafficking. I don't use the word sex because that is an adult word with adult connotations, and the enemy has stolen the narrative in this, because when you say child sex trafficking, that's why with Agenda 2030, they're now trying to say that children can consent, because that's another adult phrase, consenting to sex. It is not sex. It is the physical and mental torture of children. Another way that I like to describe it for people, before I started speaking, I asked the Lord, I said, I know I'm your voice, and I want people to understand as gently as possible in a difficult subject. And God bless your audience for listening too. I know it's difficult for them, but I wanted to be able to explain what it's like. And there's a show called I Was Prey, Prey. And it's a series where wild animals attack people out of the blue. These people survive it, and they might be missing a limb or two, but they tell their story in vivid detail. And there was one story on that is similar to what my childhood was like. It was an 18-year-old woman from the U.S., went to Africa to work in a zoo. But the zoo isn't at all like the United States. There was very weak barriers. She went to feed the lions. It was her first day there, and she was by the bars, and the male lion grabbed her leg, jerked her leg through the bars into his pen, and started eating her alive with her leg. The female came over and started eating the other leg, and the woman was trapped, and there was nothing she could do. She'd scream and scream. No one heard her. No one came to help. She finally stopped screaming and knew that she was going to be eaten alive and just accepted it. And then, of course, someone did rescue her, and she did survive, suffered, severe mental illness ever since then. But that's what it's like for a little one. You can't think at that age. You're just wandering around. I mean, people have nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren that are a year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, and you don't have much of a brain. So you're walking around, and all of a sudden, some evil animal grabs you from out of nowhere, jerks you down, does whatever they're going to do to you, and you think you're dying. And I want people to understand this part too. Each time a child is harmed, physiologically, their bodies think they're dying, literally. And their bodies go into fight or flight physiologically because they think that it's the end. So still to this day, whenever I have severe flashbacks, again, people can think of it like vets. When you flash back into your trauma, my body thinks it's going to die. And I will, within a day or two or three, I'll lose about 8 pounds of muscle and put on about 8 pounds of fat because my body thinks it's dying. And I'm a marathoner and a weightlifter now. So I have a sports nutritionist I see every month, and she does a pinch test. And we just marvel at how my body morphs from the trauma. but that's what it was like when I was little. There was also an adrenochrome harvesting room in the basement, and that would happen also. Many of the children that were there, they just didn't make it. The ones who weren't trained, tortured from probably, birth to a year old. If they came in any later, I'm assuming that they were either sold or kidnapped. Their little minds couldn't take what was happening to them. They had no training for it, no background, and some of them would just die because their little minds and bodies couldn't take what was happening to them. Some, of course, were executed. Some, of course, were accidentally killed. But that was what I saw in my childhood. And again, also, that was a feeder system into the university. So I'll stop there in case you have any questions.
Well, I just want to say you're an inspiration for coming on here, because, we've heard the phrase get them when they're young, is because, a child's development up until about 6 or 7 years of age is pretty much what they learn their whole life. It's, it's vital to development. So for you to go through that for the first 5 years of your life and be here now talking to us, I salute you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do have I have so many questions, but just if you could, indulge me with a few of them. So you said that your father loved you, your mother, she went through the same thing you did. Can we assume that in some way or no?
Yes, she was harmed as a child. And my grandmother was, so her mom was raped by a pedophile when she was 13 years old, and that got her pregnant. So in that day, generations ago, you got married. So they did. And he was also an alcoholic. And so my mom, when she was born, was in a home of psychotic alcoholism, pedophilia, again, that was generational. So the harm that was done to her, it was in the home, but still, just as, there's no like levels of horror to this. It's all horror. And so she would, during alcoholic fits of rage, she would try to stand between, I've heard these stories, her mom and her dad, to protect her mom. And when you're teeny, and that's the life that you grow up in, it messes up your brain, and it did hers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think there's probably, a lot of us can relate to violence and standing between parents and things like that. You can't make sense of it, and you do go into fight or flight for days. Now, when your mom met your dad, you said he loved you, but he also was an alcoholic. So was
Yes.
he unaware of what was going on? And then when you were out of that awful torture house, he was being loving towards you? Is that what your experience was, or was he unable to do that?
So he was rarely home.
Okay.
Because either he was a jazz drummer. So either he was in the bars at night or he was working during the day, and he was just simply never home. And I don't remember being loved by him when I was little. But by the grace of God, my parents divorced when I was 4 to 5, and I lost all contact with him. He wanted, in his drunken state, another woman. Went that path, wanted away from my mom and us, and just completely, we were gone. Now, as the years went by in his life, he went to AA and became clean and sober, praise God. And 5 years after that, he reached out to me to establish a relationship. I was a grown woman, and he was like a total stranger by then. And I was praying about it, and God gave me that scripture, honor your father and mother. And he said, and it doesn't say unless they were an alcoholic and divorced when you were little. So I thought, okay. And so we met, and it was such a blessing from the Lord, because I got to have this amazing, beautiful relationship with him as an adult woman. And that's whenever I realized he loved me. He always did, and had no idea what happened. And part of my story is very supernatural. because when I was little, I saw God all the time, literally in the trafficking house and at the university, because when they're little, they just come from God. And you ask any little ones, do you see Jesus? And they'll point. Or do you see angels? And they'll point, because they still can. I have a friend in the Department of Re-Education. She said when we go to school, they intentionally get that out of children so they forget. But when they're little, they remember. And I would see Jesus and angels and demons. I go to heaven a lot. All that's still very, very true. I live a very deeply supernatural spiritual life. So that being said, with my dad, when he died, I was in my garage lifting weights, deep grief. And I was just telling this story last night. As a matter of fact, it's fresh in my mind. Deep grief. I had no idea someone could grieve that much, because I'd come to deeply love him as an adult. And all of a sudden, I felt God's presence in my garage and my dad. And this was a week after he passed. And I couldn't see them, but they were there. And, you know, when you're in heaven, on earth, it's like a weighted blanket that we have. And the worry and stress and pressures of life. And when you're in the presence of God and in heaven, that's gone. And I have Holy Spirit goosebumps head to toe now. And there's literally there's no pain, there's no sorrow, it's real. So there they were. And I heard my dad speak. And the only thing he says, so here's a man back from the grave to come visit, because he'd never been able to visit my house. I take it whenever we're gone, we have a bucket list of places we can go that we couldn't go on earth. And God takes us there, because that's what happened. He'd never been able to come to my house in his later years, and he wanted to see it. The only thing he said was, your mother harmed you badly. And I could tell by the tone of his voice, he had absolutely no idea. And to me, that was an even deeper confirmation of what I'd experienced as an adult woman, having a relationship with him that he had absolutely no idea.
Yeah. Wow. And okay, so now I just want to move to the other part. You made a very chilling statement that in all these towns, or most towns, you're going to have this, like so I live in a really nice neighborhood, and we're flanked by kind of a not so nice neighborhood, and then a really ultra super high end neighborhood on the other side, right? So we're kind of in the middle. And there's nice shops and coffee places and gyms and Pilates and all this stuff, and that's the last thing you'd think, right, going through that place when you're unawakened and unaware. Now I go there and think, well, where is it happening? There's motels and hotels, and where is this happening? So my question to you is, and I don't even know if you can answer it, where do we find these places? How do we find them? Is there a way to, if everybody were to have sort of a checklist of what to look for, that we could start to find these places for all those who want to take some kind of action to save children?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that. I encourage people to go to my website, qgrit.org. I have a tab there that says, let's find the missing kids. And on that tab, it's a list of my recommendations. There you go. Thank you. It's a list of my recommendations of how to, if people want to recognize children who are being trafficked or harmed in any way, I have a list there. I also have a list of recommendations of what to do and not do. That includes if you don't know the child, or what I find is, as I speak, people will recognize that a child that they love is being harmed. And so I give people, from my perspective, recommendations on what to do and what not to do, especially during this time that we live in. All of our systems are corrupt. And I frankly do not recommend anyone enter any of our systems. I believe that we, the people worldwide, can join hands, join shoulders, and together we can help all these children. We don't need the corrupt systems. So I have all kinds of tips and recommendations on that website that people can go to and pray through them about what to do. but based upon my experience, based upon all of the whistleblowers I talk to, I'm currently a host on the Patriots Prayer Network. We have a reach of 1.5 million people worldwide and a television station. I have a lot of whistleblowers and truth tellers on myself. And based upon all the whistleblowing, I really do not recommend any of the systems worldwide. They're all corrupt. But it gives people tips to know what to look for and what to do.
And is this something, I know your website is a great resource, but like I'm just thinking locally, like in my area, we have hotels, we have schools, we have churches and places of worship, thinking of like, so my daughter actually works in a hotel right now, part-time through college. And so she'll tell me, about the people that come in, and usually it's just silly gossip, like who's annoying, who's, wants something for nothing. However, she did tell me about one time where this sketchy guy came in and supposedly was with his wife. And when he was asked for ID, he didn't have it. And, they were dressed nice. And I said to her, do you think she was being trafficked? And she said, Mom, I just don't know. Like, I don't know. So how do we educate people who are, in these places that to know, like, is it like, I feel like we're having an event, coming up in Florida, and part of what we want to do is not just tell people information. We want to give them a mission for when they leave, because you find information, that's great, you're educated, but then what? How do you help society and people and children? So I feel like we need to educate more people who are interfacing, or who are right there. Like, I might see a child on the street, but I'm not a teacher, I'm not like working in these areas where I'm coming across, unless someone just looks really weird in a coffee shop or something with a young child, maybe that would, but do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
We're at that stage where, okay, enough people know about this. Now, how do we, as just regular people, start to combat it? Because the systems are not doing the job they're supposed to.
That's correct. So we need alternative parallel systems. So here are different thoughts that come to mind. The first thought is, if you, like in your daughter's case, we'll use that as a perfect example. If and when most people, we're all nieces, we're all uncles, aunts, parents, we know when something's wrong with a child. We know when something's not right. You know when things are normal, and you know when it's not right. And so the first thing is, when you think you see something, pray, because you don't know the depth and breadth of that situation. You need to be thinking of, first of all, not to be selfish, but your physical health, your physical safety, that of your family, because you don't know the depth and breadth of what you might be getting ready to get involved in. So first you pray and you ask God, what would you have me do and not do? That's step one. And he may say nothing. And I'll see children, because I have 44 times the visual and auditory acuity of others because of what I've survived. And I see things, and I'll pray about it. And sometimes the Lord is just making me aware so I can pray. There's power in prayer. And I don't want anyone to negate the power of prayer, praying for that child to be rescued, praying for the perpetrators to be in prison, power in prayer. And then ask the Lord what you would do next. Now, my recommendation is, overall, I recommend people contact ICE, because Tom Homan, he deputized, now this is in the United States, last year, he self-deputized all of us to find all these missing kids and get them to safety. And so far in the United States, they found 140,000 children in the past year or so. And so I recommend ICE. There's an 800 number on my website. Now you can go to their website and you can anonymously call. You can anonymously fill out a form, so you don't have to say who you are, and let them take care of it, because we are not law enforcement. We don't have those skills. I get concerned about local law enforcement. I know that there are good people. I have friends in law enforcement, so don't get me wrong, but there's enough corruption that I'm concerned about that. And I think ICE is far enough removed from local corruption to be able to take action. And then, so those are the two things that come to mind. And I also want to really encourage people to, we need discernment for such a time as this. You mentioned the schools and the churches. Schools are used to traffic children. And I've had enough whistleblowers to where I remember one mother, after her children came to her, she had 3, and they finally broke down and told her what was happening to them, which is huge. If these little ones had been told that that the parents will be killed, the pets will be killed, their siblings will be killed if they speak. I mean, it is tortured out of us to be able to speak. So if a little one trusts an adult enough to say they're being harmed, I want adults to know the gravity of this, because they're doing this thinking that they could, that you could be killed. I mean, it's a very grave situation. So of course it shocked the mom, and they said that they were being trafficked from their public school. So she went to check in on them, and sure enough, they were all being held in a room by themselves. And when she asked administration why, they had no answer. And what was happening was law enforcement was coming to the school, taking her children and trafficking them during school hours. So people need to be careful. Churches. I have had so many whistleblowers. The churches were involved when I was little. And I've had so many whistleblowers today. Same thing. So if do you really know who's watching your little ones in nurseries and the Sunday schools? I mean, do you really know? And I've had, and these are even my most recent whistleblower in an elite community in the United States, high end, very, very wealthy people going to a local church. And in the end, all the children were being harmed. And they went to law enforcement, who was involved. They went to the judicial system, who was involved. And these systems, it's like when I was little, they're connected, they're corrupt, and they cover for each other. Is it everybody? No. There are good churches, there are good teachers, there are good. So I don't want, but what I do want in this day and age, we're at a critical point, and there are too many children being harmed. And if the adults open their eyes and wake up to this, and it's up to us to protect our children. And we need to be fully aware. So many children are being harmed, which tells you how many people out there that are doing the harming.
Yeah. I mean, Lee Dundas, when we had her on our show, she said it doesn't matter how big or small the town is. If there's a motel there, there's trafficking.
Yes.
Going on.
Yes. Yes.
They're using all the schools, all sorts of places. The things that are meant to, they use to look after children are being used as, not all of them, obviously, but in many, many cases, for the exact opposite. Crown Prosecution Services, etc., etc.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it includes our judicial system and what's called Child Protective Services. And people need to be aware. Your audience is awake, and so this might make them even more awake. And this is the United States that I can speak to. The family court systems are for-profit corporations. They're owned by individuals, including some of the judges. The Clintons developed programs the Clintons developed the CPS, Child Protective Services. I call it Child Pedophile Services. They lose, I'm going to put that in air quotes, 3,000 children a month. How do you do that? Well, they're being trafficked. And so what will happen is you enter the family court system. The whole thing, all the money goes toward getting them in the court, getting them in these homes to the Child Pedophile Services. There's no money in putting the children back with the parents. No money. There's money in giving foster care. Who knows? Hardly vetted at all. And then there's money in getting the children adopted away from the parents. So people need to be aware that this is everywhere, which again, I come back to pray about this. But if you know a little one who's being harmed, I really, personal opinion, don't recommend them entering the systems, because once they're in the system, so people need to be aware, if they know a little one who's been harmed, it shocks them, it appalls them. Their first instinct is to get them to the doctor to see if they've been harmed. Well, you know what? From a child standpoint, now you're contributing to their harm because they don't understand. Now they're with a doctor and a professional. You're sitting there watching them being harmed again. It's mentally devastating. And you know the child's been harmed. Why do you need medical proof? And our medical systems, they're taught whoever brings the child in is likely the perpetrator. So now all eyes are on you, and law enforcement is now looking at you. And that's why so many pedophiles get away with this, and the good people are destroyed in the court system and financially, because that's how the system is rigged to look at the parent or person who's trying to help the child. And plus law enforcement, they can take your child from you and put them in inpatient psych wards for up to 3 days. And then they're exposed to, children with severe mental illness. So we can do this. We can create, I believe, parallel systems where we can help each other. And again, that's part of the QGrit.org ministry, is the aftercare of these little ones, helping give people guidance. And there's 6 phases that the Lord gave me. We're in phase 1 and starting to enter phase 2. And this is how we help them, because the rescue is one level, and then the next level is the extensive healing that they're going to need.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I didn't even know that about the medical system, that's how they're taught, like you're not looked at as a hero, you're looked at as a potential perpetrator.
Yes.
So are there things to, like, what did this house, if you will, that you were brought to look like? Was it just like down the street, like in a regular neighborhood,
Yes.
and people thought neighbors thought, wasn't that strange? Like, did they wonder why all these children were brought there every day? Did they think she's a babysitter? What would you think? Like, if all of a sudden I moved in and there were kids coming in and out of a house, I would just at least think, like, not now. Like before I was awakened, I would just be wondering, are they their kids? Are they babysitting? So how do they even get away with the front of having what did people think you were going there and all these other kids were going there for?
So now we're talking about people who weren't customers, because again, the whole community was involved in the cover-up. But here's what I've come to understand as an adult from all the whistleblowers and people that I talk to that have been harmed. When we become adults and we start talking to people who lived in the area and things, you'll hear them say, well, I knew that something was happening to you. And yeah, I knew something was happening in that house. And yeah, I knew, but I didn't know. People will turn a blind eye. They'll turn away. They'll not look. They'll not want to be involved. And so that's a piece of it, is that there are some people that just simply do not want to know, and they put blinders on. And we see them today with everything happening in the world. They're like ostriches with their heads in the sand. They do not want to hear it, which is why, again, God bless your audience, because not all audiences truly want to hear this story. I'm a woman of strong faith. It's very hard for me to get on any faith-based podcasts because people don't want to hear it. Wow. And so that's one level. I think the other problem is some people were harmed themselves as children, and they just cannot get involved. It's too triggering. It's too much. And then I think the other piece of this is the MK Ultra programming. So that's a strong part of my childhood too. And the MK Ultra programming is very alive and very real all across the world. We all lived through it in 2020. That was the first above ground MK Ultra programming operation. And unfortunately, we lost that battle. But knowledge is what brings people out of the programming, because when you're programmed, you can see things but not see them at the same time. Yeah. So people are programmed not to see this happen, because it's the children, they're everywhere that are being harmed. But people are programmed not to see and to go on with their lives, like being in the Matrix, walking through life, going to the soccer games, and all this kind of thing, while there's children being trafficked and harmed everywhere. And these are good people, but they just are programmed and they don't know it.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a little bit more about this? You know, your experience with this MK Ultra and stuff, because I've heard you say that you were drugged and electrocuted, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that gets me to the university. So if I may, I'll speak about the university for a couple minutes. Okay. So the trafficking houses throughout the world are used to as a feeder to get children into the universities for the experimentation. And for me, what would happen would be a government employee, and likely CIA, because the CIA has admitted to the MK Ultra programming, which, by the way, I'd like to start with some resources for your audience for their own research. If you go to the National Security Archives, in October of 2024, they did a data dump of 1,500 documents. It was historical in the United States. For the first time in our history, unredacted documents about MK Ultra. And Kathy O'Brien's a good friend of mine, and I gave those to her, and I said, because she's testified before Congress, she's read all these. I said, Kathy, are these fresh documents, or are they like just regurgitated from years ago? And she looked at them and she said, I've never seen these before. These are brand new, historical. They did their second data dump in October of 2025 at the National Security Archives, so you can read more about how the CIA started MK Ultra and what the programs were that are at least that the materials weren't destroyed, gets us up to the mid 1970s. You can also read the congressional testimony of Kathy O'Brien in the 1990s. The program's alive and well. In 1995, the United States government merged the MK Ultra program with the remote viewing department into one. So it's still very much alive and well. And with the other documents that people can look at is to go to cia.gov, which is the CIA's own website. And if you go to the reading room and you type in MK Ultra, any FOIA requests, which is in the United States Freedom of Information Act requests, the government is supposed to release those documents. And so to any FOIA requests, those are published on the CIA website. So I want to start saying that people can do their research and understand this. Also, Representative LYNNE a couple weeks ago did a one-day congressional hearing to start on MK Ultra. And she said that she's going to have survivors testify. So Kathy O'Brien thinks that it's going to be me and her and another good friend of ours, Dr. Juliet Engel, whose family were CIA members who brought the Nazi scientists over after World War II through Operation Paperclip and infiltrated all of our systems. So between the three of us, we're able to give eyewitness testimony to these crimes against humanity and these crimes against the children. So I want to start people with research. So then with my story as an eyewitness to these crimes, it all started whenever a government employee would pick me up at my house. And I presume CIA, because the CIA is the three-letter agency who's admitted to doing this. And my mom would write a check, and they would call it going to camp. And I'll put that in air quotes. And I hear this from a lot of survivors. You know, we'll say similar stories and we don't even know each other. So this is how it worked. And so she would write a check and she would pretend that I was going to camp, and this man would pick me up. And, you know, I can still remember, one day I was 3 years old, and when it happened, I knew exactly where I was going. And I remember internally doing a stance in my mind, kind of like Peter Pan. He was an idol of mine because, you know, he was tough and he was strong and he was brave. And I remember at 3 thinking, I can do this, I can go, I can do this, which is just horrific to think that a 3-year-old has to do that in order to survive. It's unspeakable, although I'm going to speak about it. So then I would be drugged and hooded and taken to the U.S. University Medical Center. Now, when it comes to that location, the Lord has asked me to say any university, because when you research the CIA documents, I have a list now from those documents. I can name 20 to 30 US-based universities in the United States doing MK Ultra experimentation. And again, this is worldwide, so it's not just the United States, but that's the documentation that I have. And the universities will say that they had no idea they were being funded by the CIA because they used cutout companies to fund them. But my question is, you may not have known who funded you, but you did it anyway. That's my thought. You did it anyway. You knowingly did this anyway. So when I would go to the university, we would start at a performing arts center, and there were adults everywhere to organize the kids, and there were tons of kids, and none of them were over 7 to 8 years old. And we would go into the Performing Arts Center, and the children would be separated by those that had homes to go to and those that did not. And then would come the section that the little girl in me would call it the money changing tables. So anytime you've been to events at universities, like I've been to some of my families, the performances, their gymnastics and things, and there are those long rectangular tables that fold down where you give money to get in. That's what they had. And so the pedophiles would come and pay for the performance. So the pedophiles would fill the Performing Arts Center, and then the children would all be put backstage, and then we would come out and perform and be sold as a child slave auction to the pedophiles. And so I want to say slavery is alive and well, but it's the children. It's the children today that are being sold, and people need to be aware of that. So then we would be sold to the pedophiles, and then pedophiles do what pedophiles do. At night, I can remember being in what looked as an adult to me now like a gymnasium, and rows of beds would be set up with the children in them, and the pedophile, and this would be at night, and the pedophiles would go in groups up and down where the children were giggling, doing what children do. And I have a very vivid memory of, so a man was coming at me, and I had it. And, I would see Jesus all the time. And all of a sudden I said, Jesus, help me. And that man left. So, the power of the name of the Lord Jesus Christ is amazing. And I learned that when I was tiny. So then after that, we would go into the labs underground. And when I describe the labs, I want people to think of, so during, when Israel was attacked in October 2024, they took us underground to their hospitals that they have set up for wartime. And they're identical to above ground. So you can look at actual pictures of underground hospitals by going back to those days. And it's the same. So when you think underground, these aren't caves and rough places. They are sophisticated labs that mirror what's above ground. And below ground, the children would be separated into, again, those that had homes to go to and those that did not. And since I was one that had a home to go to, all of the experimentation and torture was done in dental chairs. And to this day, I have a difficult time going to the dentist. I try to avoid that at all costs if possible. And there would be medical people there. The doctors and nurses would be in surgical garb. So they'd have on the hats and the masks and all of it. And why, I'm not sure, because I'm sure it's probably not to be identified, because the government employees were there. And again, I presume it's CIA because they're the ones that said they did this. And they would be standing there in their suits, no garb or covering or masks or anything. And then there'd be med techs. There was a flat screen TV. People were observing the procedures. And I don't know if those were other medical people, if they were government people, but they'd be watching. And to try to help people understand, Hillary Clinton called us useless eaters. They mean that. They do not see us as humans. I was a lab rat. I was not a little girl. None of the children were people to them, and humans that were experimentations, were lab rats, where the things that they did, the physical and mental torture, it's heinous what they do. And they have no remorse. They have no sadness. They have no anything. They are not like us. And so I would be exposed to physical and mental torture, sexual torture. And the whole time I'd be hooked up to monitors. So I would have this medical equipment. I'd have a hat on, a metal device, and then tubes and wires everywhere. They would do adrenochrome harvesting throughout the procedures. And then while they would do to me what they would do to me, they would watch these medical monitors, because the whole purpose of this, and you'll see this in the CIA documents, mind control, MK Ultra. Hitler Himmler developed MK Ultra in Germany, in the Nazi concentration camps, those horrible experiments. And I describe the labs, I always have, as an underground Nazi concentration camp with the children, because the same experiments were going on. I'm sure that, same people that were there, and we're in third generation now, they came over through Operation Paperclip, and they, MK Ultra was to control the mind. K stands for control, is how they spell it in Germany. And the whole thing was to control the minds of people. That was the whole purpose of the experimentation. And when you read the CIA documents, they'll talk about recruiting these medical people, because, of course, people ask me, it is so hard to fathom anyone doing this. But let me tell you the CIA's own words about this. When they first started this in the United States, they wanted the best of our medical professionals. And so they started trying to recruit them. And they said at first, the first few were like, we're not doing that. That's unethical and immoral to experiment unknowingly on U.S. citizens. It's wrong on multiple levels. But then the CIA said quickly they were able to easily recruit the majority of the best of the medical people in the United States, because they wanted to do experimentation. They said to go where no man has gone before and figure out how to control the brain through MK Ultra mind control techniques, which is what I was exposed to. And so while they would do these things to me, they would just objectively, with no feeling or compassion, watch the monitors, map my brain, see what doing different tortures would do. Also, part of this is big pharma development. So they were developing medications during this. They wanted to develop big pharma to where they could figure out just how much to give someone before it killed them, and then back it off for their profit above ground. And this is what it was like. And after each session, I would have to recall in vivid detail what they just did to me. And I have to say that was the most terrifying part of all of it, because their faces, these were serious people. And I knew if I didn't do this, I could never imagine the horrible things they were going to do to me, because when these kind of people are given children who have no ability to protect themselves, their minds, the horrific, heinous things that they come up to do, I mean, there's no boundaries there at all. So I knew that they were capable of completely awful things that hadn't even been done to me yet. And they were so serious about, I'd better remember this. Well, when I would remember everything, they were tracking my brain, the memories. And when they'd find them, they'd electrocute my mind, my brain, to get rid of those memories. It was how they thought to keep me from speaking. But here's, like a spoiler alert, but God, they do not know God. They are Luciferian Satanists. They do not know the God that we serve, and God can do anything. So he has been bringing my memories back in full force. And when you have your memories, when you're tortured like that, you have photographic memories that are stored in your brain. And I'm sure had I stayed past 5 years old, I would be used for their MK Ultra operations above ground. But praise God, I was not there past 5 years old. And they thought that they took out all my memories, but they're coming back loud and clear, as you can tell, by the grace of God. And so I'm able to talk about these as an eyewitness to these crimes against the children. So that was the side where, I had a home to go to. Now, let me briefly talk about the side of the children that didn't. There were rows and rows and rows of children on metal beds like surgical tables, and they had tubes and wires coming out of them, and they would do adrenochrome harvesting and organ harvesting until the children died. No anesthesia. The screams, they enjoy the screams. I noticed that in the trafficking house. They really enjoy that. They are not like us. And RFK Jr. recently educated us that the organ harvesting that's done, if you sign the back of your driver's license in the United States and say, yeah, if something happens to me, you can have my organs. Well, he made everyone aware above ground, you're not dead yet when they take the organs, because once you die, they're no good. And there's no anesthesia used, because if they use anesthesia, the organs aren't any good. So people need to be aware of that too. And that was all developed underground, with the children, to learn how to do that procedure above ground. We have been so lied to in so many areas, but now we can wake up and get knowledge.
Wow. Well, yeah. I've got a couple of questions. At 5, how did you get out of this? So, were you rescued? Who was there for you, on the good side?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question. I was never rescued. There were no good side people. I never met a good side person. What happened was very simple. Dad, being an alcoholic, found another woman in a bar, decided he wanted to marry her and have a life with her and didn't want any of us anymore. And that was his alcoholism. And so my parents divorced, and my mom moved us to the town my grandma lived in, which would be her mom. My grandma had no idea what was going on with me. She lived far enough away. And so it was just that simple. We moved far enough away from the trafficking house to where I wasn't sent, and far enough away from that university. Now, of course, I've been watched ever since, because I was considered a high-level asset. I would also have memories of being in the DUMBs too, the deep underground military bases. So I've been watched, of course. But at that time when we moved, there was a pedophile who lived next door in his 80s. So my mom required me to go there. So she would be sitting just a few feet away in the house, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee, while I was still with a pedophile. And then after a bit of that, one day I spoke up. And that's when she realized I could now speak. And if I spoke to the wrong person, she'd be in prison. So she never required me to go back. And then I was free. And I'll tell you, I remember standing in my backyard and feeling what it was like to be free, and just relishing in freedom, because I knew I was free. And I'm here to tell you, no 5-year-old little girl should ever have to stand in her backyard knowing that she's free. That should never happen.
No, exactly. And I just want to ask you as well, obviously, in your MK Ultra, were you programmed to forget what was happening? And then obviously, you're getting your memories back now. Was there a certain period of time that you didn't sort of remember any of this, or were there just little bits and you're getting more and more coming back now, as you get a bit older, more in touch with God as well?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So the way I describe it, and the way this works when people are harmed this severely, you have amnesia. And whether it's programmed in or just a gift from God, I choose to think of it as a gift from God, because when I was 5 years old and all of it stopped, I forgot 95% of what happened to me, just forgot. And I call it the grace of God. But I also describe this, that he held my memories in the palm of his hand until I was at a place as an adult where I was safe and I had enough of a support system to start remembering. And so several years ago, I was, and so my whole life, I could quasi-function in society. I mean, you shared at the beginning of the show all my achievements. So I've been able to function well. I have a high level of intelligence. That's who they recruit for MK Ultra, for these programs. But I always knew something was seriously wrong with me, seriously wrong. And I couldn't figure out what it was, because most of my memories were gone. And then when I was safe, meaning I'm in the house I'm in now, I had gotten rid of any abusive people, because this follows you in your life. You don't make good choices because you've been harmed so badly. You're not thinking properly until you heal. So I was finally safe, and I had a marvelous godly therapist. The Lord had me go to Al-Anon for a few years, so I had a wonderful sponsor. So I had a support system. And then the first memory came. I was putting repressed memory. I was putting my makeup on, and all of a sudden, the first memory hit me. And I fell in a heap to the floor of my bedroom, just bawling uncontrollably. And what I remembered was I was in my crib, and there was a man there, and he was attacking me. And I can tell you the color of his shirt, the pattern on his shirt, the buttons he wore, what he said, what he did, and what it felt like. It's like a flashback with a vet. So your body stays here, but you go back in time, and you have all the emotions and horrors mentally and emotionally. You feel it again. Your body feels all the pain and hurt again, and you flash back in time. And I could not believe what I was remembering. I could not believe it. I knew it was real, because you don't just sit there and all of a sudden make this stuff up. I mean, I knew it was real. Couldn't figure it out. And I had somewhere to go that day. And I remember I was in my car driving, and I was really mad at God, really mad. Because I knew this was real. And I told him, I said, God, I said, I could have lived a lifetime without remembering that. I was so mad. And because it was so upsetting. And he, so, and little did I know that was the first of like a bazillion horrific things I was going to remember. But I looked up, which of course is an important thing to do when you're in trouble. And there was a billboard, and all it said in huge letters was, "It's never too late." And that's my message to survivors and those who love them, who listen to my shows. It's never too late. God said that it's important to remember, because it's like pus in a wound. And for us to heal, it has to come out. And this is how it comes out. And the Lord in his grace will have the memories start coming out whenever we're ready. And then he's right there with us as each one does come out.
And I wanted to ask you, you said you had a wonderful therapist. Was she trained in this, or was she just a good therapist that viewed it like it's trauma, so we have to, just allow you to heal? Like, was this something that shocked her, or had she worked with this sort of thing before?
So that's an excellent question. This to me is God and his, God is absolutely good. And in his mercy and his grace, I had gone through a divorce, and a divorce that I wanted, but it was very difficult because my ex wouldn't let me go. And I needed a therapist to just help me through it. And the Lord sent me to her, and I knew that I was supposed to go see her. So I developed a trust with her, and, so we got to know each other, and we worked through that. So when that first repressed memory came, praise God, I had her, because, that's the goodness of God. He sets up things we need before we even know we need them. And she was a godly Christian woman. What I didn't know is she's a leading national trauma therapist in the United States. I had no idea, because I didn't need that part of her, right? And so, and because of God, I am the things that I tell her, God bless her, that she listens to all this and helps me process through the trauma. But she's helped a lot of people with trauma, vets, children. Trauma is trauma.
Right.
The level that I've had, no, she's not heard it before, but she knows God. And so when I talk to her, she prays for all of her patients, but she asks God's wisdom, and he will, help guide her and tell her things and confirm to her so that she can best help me. And I do recommend, it's on my qgrit.org website, but the therapy that she uses EMDR, which I believe is the leading technique that we have available today to help people with trauma. It helps you process these things out quickly. So it doesn't take a long time. It's just that I have so many, and they're so bad, and they keep coming out, that it takes time. But I have a website on my qgrit.org. I'll talk about that. because there's a website where people can go to find a therapist in their area trained in that technique.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you talk about rewiring the brain, but you've done a fantastic job personally, haven't you?
Thank you. Yes. I have been working very, very hard on my recovery, and have in my qgrit.org website, I list all the different ways, things that I've done to become, again, the sane, rational woman that you see before you today. And so I briefly share those on my website and ask people who have had any type of trauma, or those who love them, to prayerfully go through that list and ask the Lord what resonates, what's going to be helpful for each person. And then just listen to the Lord, because that's how I even got that list in the first place. Is I have a very close relationship with him and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and they'll guide and tell me where to go and what to do, because healing is a process. It's not God's healed me on different occasions, for sure. He has most of us. But his way seems to be, he likes to use other people. He likes to use other people to help other people, like you guys having me on your show. I mean, he likes to use other people to help. And then whenever we're comforted, we can comfort and help others. And that he likes us to be his hands and feet. He could snap his fingers and fix this whole world in a second, you bet, because he's supreme. But he likes to use people. And that's why we're here, is to help each other.
Yeah, definitely. I would like just to ask you about, obviously, the lesbian, gay and bi movement. Always great people. I know lots of people in this, but they've continued to add letters on this with the end goal of putting a P in there to normalise paedophilia.
Yes.
They're calling minor attracted people now. They're trying to bring this language in. But can you just talk about this a little minute, and how this is? No one cared, and then they went for the children. Right? And the benefits of why so many people now we see all these agendas in schools, drag queens in schools and all these sorts of things, and how many of these teachers were indoctrinated themselves as children to follow this agenda. And now a lot of them are teachers in the schools, and therefore, the benefit of homeschooling.
Yes, boy, I'm all for homeschooling. And if people stay in any public school system worldwide, only keep your children there if you're going to fight for them. And if you're not going to fight, get them out, because they're being harmed. So that community, the LGBTQ, etc., the vast majority of them were harmed as children. It doesn't excuse pedophilia, but it helps you understand why they are attracted to they've been harmed by one sex or another, and so they're just trying to leave it, whether they remember or not. But when it comes to our little ones, the Department of Education, I call it the Department of Re-Education. And again, I can speak to the United States more than worldwide, although no, it's worldwide. If any federally funded program in the United States, I have friends and whistleblowers, pre-K, before they even get into kindergarten. So federally funded daycares from birth until they get into school, they're required to teach sex ed beginning with babies, and it's a requirement. And so if anyone listening has a child they love in any of these daycares, go in and demand to see the curriculum, and they won't give you the curriculum of the children because they'd be outed. Ask for the curriculum of the teachers and the daycare people, and you will see that they're teaching babies about sex all the way up. And then when children come in who are being harmed, they're taught to overlook any of that. This is part of Agenda 2030, and it's a pedophile agenda. By the time they reach kindergarten, they're teaching them, so they have all the porn books in the library, sheer porn, to teach the children about sex. And by the time the children are 8 years old, Agenda 2030 requires that 8-year-olds be taught having sex with adults is love. So this is the curriculum. And if you're in the Department of Re-Education, if you have children in there that you care about, again, ask to see the sex ed curriculum, ask to see all the curriculum because it's everywhere. And above and beyond, ask to see the teacher training. because you may not see it. It could be hidden in curriculum, but the teachers know exactly what they're doing. That's what they're taught to do. Also, there is, so if you're going to stay, I don't recommend anyone stay, because the children are being groomed. And this is grooming. It's just that they're grooming them for a pedophile agenda. And it is Agenda 2030 throughout the school system. It's a UN agenda, and it's very much alive and real. And then there's also something I want to make people aware of called the Trevor Project. In the elementary schools, get in the bathrooms and go look there, because they have metal signs that are bolted in the walls. Why is this? Because they know we'd rip them down and burn them otherwise. And the first thing they say is, are you thinking about suicide? Now, why with our little ones would you have them thinking about suicide every time they go to the bathroom? What is the important, that isn't even normal. That is the most abnormal thing, to perpetually put the idea over and over in their little minds of committing suicide. So then they give a hotline. And I've had friends call that hotline as adults and pretend to be children. Within 5 minutes, they're in a chat with pedophiles saying, don't tell your parents, we're here to love you. And people need to be aware of this and more. And if you keep your children in, fight for them. And if not, I really recommend the homeschooling, because we need to leave these systems because they're completely corrupt.
So, we understand that the Department of Education is being, dismantled at this point, right?
Yes.
And obviously the military and Trump and all this, operation that's going on, you can't snap your finger, right, to have all these things done. So the awareness factor is very important. But I have to believe, and you can correct me, that the Agenda 2030 and the UN and all these things have pretty much been dismantled, even if it hasn't been publicly, put out there. I mean, I have to believe that they're not, when I say they, I mean the military and, RFK, Trump, like the figureheads, that they're not just like, well, we have to, just do this and we'll get to that. I mean, that's the most important thing. Trump's first executive order as president, when he came in his first term, was about child trafficking. So this is a very high agenda. But I have to believe that at this point, number one, these things have to be start being pulled out. And number two is really just a comment and a question. These teachers are just like, okay. I mean, don't they have kids? Aren't their kids, if not in the school they're in another school? Because most teachers, or are they just, as you said, so MK Ultra to follow rules and turn off their thinking and just go into a blindly led way of doing things? I mean, I know so many teachers, and they're of all ages, from right out of school to, okay, maybe they don't have kids yet. They can't quite have enough sense at 23, 24 years old. But you have other people who've been in the system where they just like, oh, well, it's terrible, but that's what we have to do. I can't imagine getting this and going, oh, okay, cool. This is what we're going to teach next semester.
So you're right. It's a mix of MK Ultra and so let me start with Trump. And okay, so we know that many good things are happening. And yes, I do like to focus on the good too. He has begun the dismantling of the Department of Education, putting it at the state level. And the hopes is then that the parents will get involved and get things fixed. Now, if the parents, though, are asleep and unaware of what's going on, it's hard for them to get things fixed. So President Trump does the best he can do at his level, but until we, the people, have boots on the ground getting involved, then things won't change. As we're seeing in other systems, these are big Titanic ships. And to get the ship to turn around at the local level takes quite a bit of time and effort. That what I'm seeing is that most people, they're kept so busy with their lives, jobs, 2 and 3 jobs, and soccer and all this, they just don't have time for this. And so he can only do so much. When it comes to the teachers, so I have friends and family in the Department of Re-Education, and good people. But here's what I see. They have been so brainwashed, MK Ultra. So, for example, when it was first, the propaganda first came out that there are like 1,000 genders, 60 different ways to do it. I had people coming to me saying, well, yeah, it looks like now we're going to be teaching that there are, 60 genders. It was just a fact, not a, oh my gosh, we have to teach this, I'm appalled. No, it was this indoctrination, they tell them what to do, they tell them what to think. The indoctrination starts in elementary school. This didn't just start recently. It's been going on for enough generations that we've had people graduate out of colleges, which is the icing on the cake indoctrination center. People should never send their children to college. As everyone knows, they come back totally different. And so that's more the indoctrination. And then they get into the world, and with the education system that we're talking about, they're brainwashed and taught what they're taught. And plus the other issue is that's how they pay their bills. So I've had people say, I know this is wrong, but I have to pay my bills and support my family. And, that's happening in every system. And until people realize that God provides and pays for everything and connect with God and ask him, does he really want you getting your income doing this to children? But this is every system. I hear this. And then the other thing is the brainwashing. I had a good friend of mine that she decided to substitute teach at a Catholic church school. And she knew a little boy in kindergarten that was being molested because her daughter had been, and she knew the signs. She went to the administrator who said, oh, that's normal. Johnny is exploring himself. So even at the administration and teacher levels, they're taught that grooming is normal, and they're indoctrinated, they're brainwashed, they're told that this is, they listen to who they think's a higher authority as opposed to God. God is our higher authority, and we're to be asking him if these things are godly, not, blindly trusting whoever's training us or the government, heaven forbid. But that's what people are doing, is trusting, and this is all systems. It's not just education. It's our medical system, judicial system. They're all very similar in this.
Well, as you said, the biggest experiment, MK Ultra, was, COVID, and most people failed that test.
Yes, that's right. And to help people understand MK Ultra, let me spend just a minute giving the foundation. So first, they deprive people of food, like what happened to me. In worldwide, our food is not food. If we're eating GMO anything, it's Roundup. If we're, the food is no longer processed food, is chemicals. The food's not food. Then they deprive people of water. Tap water is the most poisonous stuff that there is. And so people are very dehydrated. Then they deprive people of sleep. People are so worried and stressed, they have been for years. People aren't getting good sleep. That's your foundation. Then they bring fear and terror in, threaten something. So in 2020, it was, you're going to die, you're going to kill grandma, all this kind of stuff. And then the mantra was repeated. So it's repetitive mantra by the mainstream media, which of course we know is under Operation Mockingbird. And so because of that, then it gets people to do things they would never do in a million years. So why would anyone think if we put a piece of toilet paper over our mouth, it's going to stop the most deadliest disease known to man? And yet people did it, and yet if we're out eating, if we remove the toilet paper and eat, the deadly virus can't get us. But if we put the toilet paper back on afterward, we're safe. I mean, ludicrous, asinine things. And yet, people thought that they were going to die. And so they were willing. That is MK Ultra. And for people who are trying to wrap their mind around, I don't get it. We lived it. Most of us survived it. And that was the foundation of it. And that's their game plan. So whatever may or may not happen next, you need to look for the same things, because it's MK Ultra. And unfortunately, people still, our food's awful, the water supply is bad, people still aren't getting sleep. Dr. Jan Halper Hayes is a friend of mine. She said 83% of the world right now is suffering from chronic PTSD and anxiety from what's happening, which of course I completely relate to. trying to help people with that. So it will likely happen again because that's their playbook. But I'm hopeful that I see more and more people awake, because knowledge is how you break free from that brainwashing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, look, we know that they can't just dismantle systems, the good guys, so they have to kind of go in and fix it from the inside, and turn it over. And I am very positive that I think a lot of this is starting to happen, and people are becoming more aware, and just, you can hear it in lingo, the way people are more aware of their personal vibration and their frequency and what they should be eating, and maybe reading labels. Of course, there's a whole slew of people that aren't, and they're the ones that are still kind of glued to, the news on TV and the nonsense. But I think the infiltration happened so slowly through the decades that it's like unboiling the frog now. So that has to happen, because I talk to people sometimes, I'm sure you do too, and you try to explain certain things for their benefit, and they are violently angry. It just gives them such cognitive dissonance that you're going against something, so they take it out on you. But that shows you how embedded the belief system is. So I think that naturally has to take time, because otherwise you'd have, people like the Q post say 99% of the people would be put in the hospital, and if they found everything out so fast. But I do feel like we're seeing that shift, and I hope, at least when I look at my kids who are 19 and 22, they have a lot more sense, in some ways. Like, in some ways we had more street smarts, but they have more insight. I had no idea, about pedophilia. I mean, I knew it was like a weird guy, that strange guy that's driving around in the car exposing himself by schools, but we didn't really know it was a problem systemically. But these kids are much more aware, and they are much quicker to use the lingo and understand and point out that it's a bigger problem. So hopefully they're coming into this world with a little more awareness that, as the top is working down to educate us, we're coming up to meet them. And I think we have to we have to be aware, but we have to keep continuing to have a positive attitude, because that's going to help wake more people up, keeping, that frequency out of the fear and the lack and all these things that they control us with.
I agree. I have a huge, tremendous amount of hope. And I, again, encourage people to go to qgrit.org, because I have lots of action steps that people can take, and lots of ways that I heal and I've helped other people heal. But I'm absolutely full of hope because of what I see. And it's important that we're all educated. That's why you guys have your shows and I have mine. And that knowledge does break us out of MK Ultra. At the same time, we need to be aware of all of the many, many amazing things that are going on, throughout the world. I encourage people that if they have a difficult time seeing that, to start keeping a journal every time that you hear something positive and good that's happening. And normally we'll mainly hear that from alternative media like yourself, because mainstream media isn't going to do it. So yeah, I have quite a bit of hope. And the other thing that I like to talk about with the hope is the spiritual battle. So we're in a spiritual battle. This is good versus evil. We can boil all of it down to good versus evil. And spoiler alert, we win. So that's important to keep the focus on. And I like to do a lot of teachings because of my background. I do a lot of teachings on how we can bind demons and command angels for such a time as this. And I have my own Rumble channel, The Lynn Scott Hagerman Show. I'm on YouTube at Lynn Scott Hagerman. I can't post a lot on YouTube because I'll get kicked off. But right. I have teachings on Rumble, for example, about how to bind demons. I'm close to getting a book published on binding demons and commanding angels. But the Lord Jesus Christ, he gave us power, dominion, and authority over evil. He did it, and he said, we'll do even greater things. This isn't even the greater thing. And it's so simple to do, and people need to realize. So, for example, when we see the riots and the people being ugly, like you mentioned, and even maybe people we know, the simple thing to do is to bind their demon, because there's a demon speaking that. And anytime I have someone in my life that's being ugly like that, I don't do it to their face. I don't need to make a big scene. I will do it myself where I'm at and forbid their demons to speak to me or have anything to do with me. And I'm telling you what, I have much nicer people interactions with on their end after that. So that's part of this battle that we're in, is understanding demons are real. You know, Jesus said they were. He saw them all the time. I do. I know most people don't. I see beyond the veil. It's one of my gifts from my childhood. And the ability to command angels. We have angels all around us. And I know people can't see it, but each of us do. And frankly, they're military. They're part of the host of heaven. And they're standing there kind of with their arms crossed, tapping their toe like, give me something to do. And so we command them like military to go and take care. So when you see a law you don't like, or a policy you don't like, or something, anything that's happening, whether warfare, you know, we can stop the demons, the chemtrails. We have this ability to do this, and we can command angels too. And they are much more afraid of us than we are of them. If people can just understand that, because they know. That's why the churches have been infiltrated. We've all been dumbed down, because they know that once we all wake up and realize the power that we have in God and the Lord Jesus Christ, it's game over for them. And it's already begun. And that's why I think they're in their final throes, because they know they've lost. So they're pulling out the stops, giving us more than they ever have before. I see that as being close to victory, because we do win. And when this is over, we're in an Ecclesiastes 3:3 time, a time to tear down and a time to build up. And my goal is to get people healthy, because people are so unhealthy. Get them healthy, so that way they can help tear down these corrupt systems, not the people. There's some good people in there, the systems. And we need to build up godly systems, so that way we can help everybody here on planet Earth. That's where I think we're going, because I see it. I see it. I'm from my childhood, I'm prophetic and I'm a seer, and I see it. So I see the other side, but we need to help people get there one at a time. And that's why I survived. I survived for all this, to share this and to help people. It's why I'm here.
That's beautiful. Now, I'd just like to say, on a little bit of a lighter note, obviously I say this all the time, that it is we spend a lot of the time, Elisa and I, doing what we're doing, and yourself and stuff, and the importance of, you know, trying to maintain our health the best way we can, because we've been attacked at all angles. But just getting out, I mean, I either go for a run, a walk, a bike ride, or go to the gym every day. So, you know, it's good for the brain, and obviously for the physical as well. But do you just want to, two things, do you want to talk a little bit about your weightlifting and stuff? And secondly, have you got your gardener there today?
So the weightlifting, so I'm a marathoner and a weightlifter, and I used to not be healthy, you know, at all. And then the Lord had me start lifting weights years ago, and then running outside, and I've never quit. So I've ran many marathons. I like to run the big ones with 20 or 30,000 runners in major cities. And then I also have done so many half marathons that they're, you know, I can't even count them. I've probably put on 15,000 miles or more, you know, with all my tennis shoes over the years. And I love to lift weights. So being healthy is very, very important. I have a running coach, a sports nutritionist, and a personal trainer, because it takes a team to get me across that finish line. So I'm really blessed with that. And then what was your other question about a garden?
Has your gardener been there today? We've been here.
Oh, have you heard it? Okay.
Yeah, the only reason I say that is because Elisa, she's everything she tries. Her gardener turns up every Thursday while we're doing the show, right? And it's hilarious.
So yes, I do. He did. So here I call him my lawn man. That's what I call him. But I needed someone, you know, this is the grace of God. I needed someone to mow my yard. And I was out running last week, and there was this guy, and he had the word hope in the back of his truck. And I thought, So I stopped. Turns out he's a marvelous, godly man, and he supports missionaries worldwide. And he does that through taking care of lawns. So I thought, okay, let's do this. So he picked today to start mowing my grass for the first time ever. I'm sure he did an amazing job, but this is the God we serve. He provides what we need. So yes, that's exactly what you heard. And I'm so excited to see what he's done with my yard, because we've had a lot of rain and the grass is pretty tall.
Lovely.
That is
Lovely.
lovely.
Okay, Elisa, have you got any other questions? Because you've got a little announcement to make, haven't you, as well, in a bit?
I do. No, I have to tell you, I perused for today through your website, but I am going to take a very deep dive, because you just have so much information. And I'm also a certified life and health coach. So, I can't really go anywhere. I mean, I butt in a little too much sometimes, especially in the supermarket or at a restaurant, like, did you know? Some people are gracious and some people just blow you off. But no, it's a passion of mine to try to make as many people healthy as well, like you. So I want to go through, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. But I want to go through really some of those things because they sound fascinating. And I would encourage a lot of our audience to do the same, because you certainly put in a lot of information into your site with helpful, I don't know, when we find these things out, we want to share them, right? That's it's kind of like what we're supposed to do. So God sets us up for those missions to do. I do want to say to you, though, that if anybody's of the belief, which I tend to be of the belief, that we sort of choose how we're going to come incarnate into this world and what our mission is and what we're supposed to do, you are one of the ones who definitely sacrificed a great deal to end up in a position to help people. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm just really blessed and honored. And it was nice to meet both of you in person, because I love to watch, and I've enjoyed the chat too. You have an amazing audience and followers.
We do. Well, I have a small announcement. We do a show on Fridays. It's actually a cousin of mine who was very, I'll put it this way. I love him to death, and we would spar. And mostly what we would spar about is the awakened information versus him as, a normie. And everything I would say, he poo-pooed it, because he's very successful and very, book smart. And the last kind of comment we were having coffee one day, joking, laughing, and he mentioned some group. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, oh yeah, that disgusting group of pedophiles. And he turned to me and said, oh, I'm sorry, Elisa, is everyone a pedophile? And I said, yes, you'll be surprised. Yes. So anyway, we leave. And the drop of the Epstein files came, and like a week later or whatever it was, 2 weeks later, and he called me devastated. And, he said, I am not a man who gets humbled, nor do I admit it. And I'm like, you've humbled me. So he was very broken. And I said, you know what? I said, it's going to be okay. Would you like to come on our show? Because I think people can really benefit from your sort of red pilling, if you will. And, and he's like, well, I don't want to do this alone. And I was like, well, you won't. We'll be there to hold your hand. So we called the show, because his name's Renee, Red Pilling Renee. About, what was it, 2 weeks ago, Stu?
Yeah.
He was on our show for our regular show, and he's like a little distracted, and he starts, we're talking about current events. And then he starts saying, I had like a very strange thing happen. This client of his, he's an attorney, this client of his called him. They don't speak really, I don't think they speak much English, right? Because he's fluent in Spanish. And his daughter was missing, and she was 14, and she had a fight with the mother, and she left very like he's divorced, so he wasn't there. It was that kind of story. We didn't have a lot of details, but they did have somehow how she made it from New Jersey to New York. We don't know how at 14, no phone, no credit card. And somehow outside a women's shelter, somebody captured, the camera captured a photo of her with a date and a time. So that's kind of what we had to go on. And then of course I called Mark at that point. The father called the authorities.
Well, let me just interject.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
We decided, didn't we, that when they said, I've got to make a call, this was when we were live, and he said, this information, I've got to make a call, because if she hasn't been found, I think we need to go down your route and all that. And she went to a shelter, didn't she? And they turned her away.
Allegedly, yeah, that's what we heard.
The night. And so when I made a call, came back, said they haven't found her. So we cut the show short. And that's when we got hold of Mark. Go on, Elisa.
Yeah, because it was like 5 days already. So of course, none of us are, we're all thinking what could have happened to this young girl. So Mark got involved, and he got some of the people from ARC involved in this whole process. Now, Renee since last week went to Europe on a trip, and he keeps did any word, any news, but I just literally got a text. If I looked a little like I wasn't paying attention at one point, because he just sent me a text, and he said, they found the girl. A man found her on the trains and kept her. He was a bit off, maybe a bit crazy, no signs of molestation. She was given alcohols, but no drugs. He was arrested. This is a miracle. Found, what's today, Monday, found her Sunday morning. And then he said, would you please announce this to your audience, because our audience was there. Yeah. When we would go, we got to go leave. And so I don't know any more details, except I think she's back with her mom, and which he told me. And that's all we know, but she's found. I don't know how they found her or who found her. So I have to, get those details. But yeah.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Because so many people have been asking, any news. Well, we've got news now, and she's back home safe and sound.
Yeah. And I told Stu in the chat, if you could see Lynn, because it's the private chat, I was like, I cannot read, because it just came in. I was like, I cannot read this without crying. You're going to have to do it. But, I calmed down since I first got the news.
Well, praise God.
Yeah.
I see it now.
Yeah. Beautiful.
That is beautiful.
What a happy ending. Lynn, would you just like to say some final words, maybe just a message of love out there, or anyone that's sort of going through what you've been through, and like that, just to finish?
Yes.
Of hope.
Thank you. I'd like to give people hope. When I come on, I know I give people hope because they hear my background, and possibly their background isn't as difficult, but nonetheless, they see me and they know if I can do it, they can do it. And that's my message. If I can do it, you can do it. Just go to qgrit.org, look at what I've done. There's also a contact page there too, so people can feel free to email me. This is also for the loved ones of survivors, and also people who they're like, what can I do to help? And so there's all kinds of ideas in there that people can help just right where they're at, because we're entering the rebuilding phase, and we're going to need people who organic gardeners and animal therapy and all kinds of things that are going to be needed. So I encourage people to start working on their gifts now. And I found that just pray and ask God what he would have you do for such a time as this, and just simply say yes. That's what I did. He said, Lynn, I want you to start speaking. I said yes. And look, I'm here now today. So just ask what your part is, say yes, and take a step at a time. And together we can eradicate these heinous crimes against the children, and we can rebuild the world into the godly systems that we know that we want. And it's going to happen, and we can do it together.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And if I could just add to that, I think that what you went through is such an extreme of awful things done to children. But, I always like to tell people, if you've had any kind of violence in your childhood or alcoholism or anything like that has scarred you, that's still a trauma. And so that has to be healed, because we can't, the whole world can't evolve unless we all start healing ourselves, as hard as that is. So I think your website's an excellent place to start, wherever you are on that spectrum of trauma.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me on today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thanks
you
for
so
what
much.
you
It's been absolutely a pleasure having you on. We love you. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank
You, everyone in the chat. And, you know, most people that are in our chat, we're all actively involved, doing as much as we can. But anyone watching this that's not, just find your courage, use your voice. The military might be working behind the scenes, but it's up to us to come and meet them in the middle. It's we the people. Where we go one, we go all, and God wins. Yeah.
Amen.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Children are the center of our world, and we do our best to show them that we care. But evil is lurking everywhere to steal their youth, kill their souls, show them things that they should never know. We live in the craziest of times, you never know what's in another's mind. We keep them safe, protect from bad, but they just choose to make them sad and keep their evil rituals alive. Who saves the children? We do, we do. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do. Who saves the children? We do, we do. And we'll fight to death to keep it safe for you. We'll fight for what's right with all of our might, and we won't leave one single child behind. They've been here since the dawn of time, and their actions take a twisted mind. But we won't stand no more. We'll track them down for sure and make sure that they are gone forevermore. Why can't you see the crimes committed on our kids by the powers that be? How long do we wait? How many must die? How many loving parents need to cry? Who saves the children? We do, we do. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do, we do. We do, we do. Who saves the children? We do, we do. And we'll fight to death to keep it safe for you. We'll fight for what's right with all of our might, and we won't leave one single child behind. Who keeps them safe and warm and so secure? We do, we do, we do, we do, we do. We do, we do. Who saves the children? We do, we do. And we'll fight to death to keep it safe for you. We'll fight for what's right with all of our might, and we won't leave one single child behind.